Hello out there in World Doll Day land. This is Kathy Turner here, talking to you from the Grovian Doll Museum and the Carmel Doll Shop in Pacific Grove. And I have brought a bevy of Kestner China dolls to discuss with you today. And I want to talk first of all about the founder of the company, and that was Johann Daniel Kestner. And he was a very enterprising individual. He began making his way in the world when he was only about 18 years old, when he was selling things like buttons and papier-mâché slates to the soldiers in the Napoleon's war. And that was around 1805. And when the war ended in 1815, he opened up his own little factory making papier-mâché goods of that nature. And that resulted in his papier-mâché competitors getting rather upset with him, and they complained to the government. They wanted to shut him down, but instead he persuaded the government to grant him a monopoly on the making of these papier-mâché goods for a period of 10 years. And then he managed to extend it for another 15 years, so he kind of gave them the middle finger, so to speak. So that was the start of Kestner. And he was making papier-mâché dolls at that time, and with wooden bodies. And I wanted to point out actually this china over here, which has the jointed wooden body. And I think this is probably one of his china dolls. And you can imagine that he made those also with papier-mâché heads and fully wooden limbs as well. And those dolls were made in these petite dollhouse sizes and then all the way up to larger scale and with different china heads too. And I don't think he was the only one making those with china heads. But then again, we have to also look about when did he start making china head dolls? Because here he is making papier-mâché. And that is a bit of a conundrum because the historical records show that the Kestner firm did not own a porcelain manufacturing company until 1860, and the Kestner Sr. died in 1858. So what was going on here? We have to get a little speculative here and speculate that most likely he was ordering china heads from another, or maybe more than one, porcelain manufacturing company during those years preceding 1860. Because you look at doll heads like this one,
which is fabulous,
and this one can only be loosely attributed to Kestner. We can't be 100% sure. It is pressed into the mold, very heavy porcelain, by the way, really finely made.
And don't you think, Kathy, this is a very early look to it?
I think it is.
Pre-1860.
I definitely think this is pre-1860.
Yeah, I think so.
So what was going on then? Well,
and another thing, as I'm looking at it in the camera lens, do you know, it has a lot of the kind of simplistic painting that the early KPMs have. It has
it does.
No eyelashes, limited decorations.
It's definitely not a KPM. We must make that clear.
No, but it's kind of following a trend of...
Yes, but look at this delicate painting around the bonnet ruffle. It's well done. The only link that we really have to this head to Kestner is in Christiane Grafnit's book on papier-mâchés. She shows some sample sheets of doll products by the Kestner firm, and it does show a series of doll heads that have molded bonnets that look very much like this. Those sample sheets do not identify the material that those heads were made from. They could be papier-mâché, they could be china.
And they could be both.
They could be both. So we don't really know. So speculative, but perhaps an early Kestner.
What I think is interesting about those catalogs is that they show heads in many, many sizes, and then they show the heads on bodies.
Yes.
So that kind of goes with collecting chinas that they... You're not going to necessarily have a factory doll and a factory body. It could be
No, except Kestner was one of the few firms that was manufacturing both heads and bodies.
But you could buy just a head.
You could apparently buy just. So the company we have.
We're assuming.
Yes,
by,
this is true.
Right, by
This is true.
their sales examples.
There's no direct link during these pre-1860 years, but the company they eventually did purchase was Studinger Müller and Company in, this is it, Ohrdruf,
Okay.
Germany.
And it sounds like another town.
Yes,
But
they're close.
The reality is we're on Lighthouse or Forest Avenue in Pacific Grove, and we're in Pacific Grove. But across the street is Monterey.
It's close.
Not saying that's true, but they are literally right across the street from each other.
Exactly.
So it's not some other region.
No, they were. It was another nearby area.
Right.
Where they had an opportunity, and it's entirely possible that they were dealing with this company or another company before that 1860 date, because there is mention in the records that I've seen that Kestner Sr. was dealing with somebody to make porcelain china heads prior to his passing in 1858. And I mean, look at this china here.
Which is divine.
With a molded bosom, again, pressed into the mold. Pink tint.
And the one thing I like to see is you've got a letter of the alphabet, which is
Yes.
kind of a system that they love to use.
She has a script F written inside. And you notice she also, like this little bonnet head, has a pink tint, and the whites of the eyes were left white.
And we have no lashes.
No lashes in this one. But
And
high
let's-
quality product here.
But the thing that's really sensational is the part, which is
Yes,
just the
the
porcelain left unpainted.
The split part. Now, that is, the
That was
skill
not
in
easy.
doing that, I would think.
I mean,
would be
you're
a
an
little
artist. How hard would that be?
That's a thin line.
That's a thin line. Mm-hmm.
So she is beautiful. And again, we have to speculate. This one is most likely Kestner. Maybe it was made by Studinger and Müller before they purchased the company. Not certain, but if you look at some of the painting characteristics that we've come to look at for Kestner dolls, there is this little white line between the lips, the corners of the mouth upturned in like a little Mona Lisa
And if
smile.
you can hold it kind of down, thank you.
And the nostrils have these open red circles painted in them.
And we saw that. Pretty good.
Those are a couple of the tells that have been associated with the Kestner company. I hesitate to rely too much on superficial painted details because painters,
Yeah, I'm not feeling it today, Kathy. I don't feel like it.
maybe
I don't want to follow your rules.
Maybe I'll do it differently. Maybe I'll go to another company. You never know.
Yeah.
Again, we have to speculate a bit, but this doll has been attributed to Kestner. So let's talk about that.
But I think that when you look at this, Kathy, that, okay, if you're talking 1860 that they had their factory, I think that this head could be a little earlier than
I
that.
agree. I think this could predate that a bit. So maybe we're talking mid-1850s or something of that nature.
But I'm taking my molds with me.
It could be.
Or I'm going to
Yes.
just buy the company and...
So let's talk about when they
Okay.
bought the company.
Okay.
So Kestner Sr., he passed away in 1858, and you would think that it would pass to his heir. Well, his only male heir at that time was a grandson who was 12 years old. So he wasn't ready to take over the company. So instead, his two wives, and I say two wives.
Well, he was the king.
He was the king. Well, one is listed as his ex-wife, but she apparently still lived in the family abode, and his current wife. I do not know what their family arrangement was that led to that, but this is the situation that was in existence then. So the two women were the ones, along with two men who were business associates, who were running the company at that time. And it was under them that Studinger, Müller and Company was purchased for the Kestner firm.
Because maybe the ladies could see the writing on the wall.
It is possible. Sometimes women were in positions of power. I don't know how much power and control they had. But they hung on to
But
the
the
business.
12-year-old didn't make that decision.
The 12-year-old did not. He waited until another 12 years, until he was 24, still very young, where he took over control of the business. And at that point, he actually expanded the porcelain factory. So, and that was Adolf Kestner.
I think that we have a mini-series story here.
I know. Don't you want to know the dirt?
I mean, you could really write between the lines. But
yeah, what was going on there? Yeah, I mean, you have to look at the social situation in Germany. The man was the king of the household. He ruled the roost.
absolutely.
And when he married his second wife, at that time he did not have a living male heir. I believe he had 5 children, and only 2 of the daughters lived to adulthood, and only one produced his grandson. His only son, I believe, had passed away at that point. So maybe his wife was past the age of childbearing, and he's looking around going, I need an heir.
Well, I mean, I think that the title of king of Dollmakers, I mean, he really was in his town the king.
He was indeed.
And I mean, there is a castle and there is royalty in that town of Wolterhausen, and you know, he is a prominent citizen
At
of the
that
town.
point, he was very prominent, very
So I don't
powerful.
I don't think he would have the same social. They were at the top of the heap.
They were. It's interesting. He went from being sort of at the bottom of the social ladder to this point where he was at the top of it.
Yeah.
So that's the social situation we had here, and so they've now purchased the factory, and this is the 1860s, and we start looking at the dolls they might have been making in the 1860s, and you can see examples like this one, which has this interesting hairdo.
And I have never seen that head with that part.
That's right. Here we have another split part.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this head before, but not with that part, which, again, whoever the painter was for this
Very skilled.
was very skilled.
And looking at the facial features, you see the same kind of facial painting characteristics that I was mentioning before. And this one, I'm looking to see if, I think at this point, this one is poured.
Okay. But do we have, are those makers scratch marks?
Those probably, with the scratch marks, I usually attribute it to the modeler. And if there is a painted mark, which this also has, that's probably the painter.
Right.
So there's a little red number 5. These are basically production marks. They don't generally identify the company. They identify the person whose shift it was and who painted this doll and whose shift it was who was the modeler for
And
this
usually,
one.
in my understanding, those scratch numbers or check marks or X, that's to just make sure, is this actually ready to,
Yes.
is it cured enough to
That could
then go
be.
to the next step?
Sometimes they'll have like a size number. This one looks like it could be either a 4 or a 9 actually, and an H scribed into it, and then the number 5 in red. So
But it has nothing to do with
it doesn't
it's
usually. It could be one, like the H might be a model number. I have no idea. We can only speculate on that. And then this one here, also with the fancy hairdo, we could actually be getting closer to even the 1870s, perhaps, with some of these elaborate hairdos.
or late 60s.
Or late 60s. She has a really fine hairdo going on. And this is also an example of where she has some boo-boos. She has a chip and a crack on her shoulder plate, but she's a really phenomenal
It's a phenomenal doll.
So I find this acceptable in a doll that has these other things going on.
Yeah, you have to, everybody has to weigh that for what.
And she is
I would
also-
certainly give her shelf space if
She
you're
is
ready to let her
also
go.
poured in the mold. And she has a whole bunch of little
She got a
lettering.
lot of stuff going on.
And again, I think these are just production marks. We
Yeah.
cannot suss out what the meaning of those is.
Tic-tac-toe.
I know. And she has the same characteristic facial features.
Yeah. But one thing we haven't talked about is so far most of what we've looked at have these long, slender, beautiful necks.
These are ladies.
Except this one has a little
She's
chugga.
a child.
Yeah.
I
So
mean, this is, you look at this and you say, this is not an adult woman.
no.
I know that collectors love to dress their dolls as adult women, but this is a child.
That's a child.
This
But
is-
these, I believe these are ladies.
These are ladies, definitely ladies. I mean, and you can look up at this one, which we borrowed from your shop, and she is I would say lady or older girl, perhaps even. And I'm going to just turn her around.
She's clearly making it go into someplace fancy.
Very fancy, and she has the same painted facial characteristics, and they have decked her out with
gold.
This gold snood. And obviously, we're not popping her head off.
No. Well, I mean, we could,
but we're not.
I don't think we have to.
We don't have to.
And then it's got this long neck.
Yeah, I think she would be perhaps not as an adult a woman as the other ones, but she's still
like a debutante.
Yes, exactly.
14 or 15.
Exactly,
16.
a young woman or older girl.
And she has a youthful look too.
And I think this would be more like 1870s.
Yeah,
You think?
late 60s.
Okay, fair enough.
Very late 60s.
So now we're moving forward a bit in time, and we have dolls like this with the bald heads.
Little girl.
And a girl again. I mean, look at this.
Mm-hmm. And this one, she has wonderful unders, antique unders, but she came to us from a collection in a horrific dress that
We just ripped that off.
that was just wrong.
But she has nice china limbs.
Nice
And
feet.
nice feet. Now, you see these heeled boots. Now, tell me, heeled boots came into fashion a little bit later, didn't they?
Yes,
So is that talking late 1860s, 1870s?
probably 70s.
I would say 70s, actually, yeah. So, and these, actually, you can find quite a few of these bald-headed chinas that are meant to have wigs. And some of them will have the black spots on them, and some will not.
But you can see that the paint is, the china paint is very similar, identical to
Yes,
So that
it
came
is.
in. But again, it's got a kind of very simple paint job. It's not.
Well, she's a small doll,
yeah,
too.
Yeah.
So then we got moved forward a little bit in time, I think, and let's come over here. And now they call this the covered wagon hairstyle. These are from your shop, actually. And I found these, I thought it was nice to look at these because this is very similar mold, if not the same mold, but look how different they are.
Oh, sure. One got a little wash of pink.
This one has a pink tint.
Very slight, but
Very slight, but it's there. And this one, of course, doesn't really have that. And these, I think, would be, again, late 1860s, maybe.
these might have been made for 20 or
They-
30 years.
That's the thing. People always want to know, well, when was my doll made? Well, once they had that mold, they could use it for 20 years.
Yeah, and it's kind of generic hairstyle.
It
The
is.
center part, little sausage curls on the side.
This one has a little bit more modeling,
Well, because she's bigger too.
a little bit bigger, but it's also how freshly out of a new mold was it made.
Right.
Sometimes there's a little more distinction. And actually this one looks like it could be, though it's hard to compare with a tiny one, could be a...
Oh yeah, because we're cut. The mold's coming down, down,
yeah,
down.
yeah. Same
Just
mold.
changing the shoulder plate so it can go on the wooden body.
So again, same facial feature painting happening again.
And I think that the covered wagons have a lot of appeal for.
And these would be children.
Yeah, absolute children.
These are not adult women. I know they're often dressed as adult women. but
Well, the
these are
reason they're
children.
nude, Kathy, is they came looking like floozies.
And they
So,
often get floozied.
so they that went into the get rid of it pile because it was the fabulous '60s full throttle, nylon.
Yes, folks, don't do this to your dolls.
No.
Keep things in
So
scale.
I would rather see them with no clothes.
I would
than,
too. I do
than
the same
that.
thing. So let's see. We're going to move over to this side, and we're going to talk about this gal here, which I think she would be into the late 1860s, 1870s
I
as well.
agree.
But look, she has brown eyes, which is less common. And this is a relatively more easily found model. These do show up. Brown eyes, a little less common. But I think that this is probably one of their staple models that they
Yeah.
had out there a lot. You can find this sometimes in very large sizes too. And you can also, as it turns out, find it now in bisque.
It's hard to imagine that, and the two are the same thing. But we did quite
head-to-head.
We did quite a bit of work, and because it's bisque, it doesn't, it gives an illusion of something different. But I think it's the same.
I think it is, and I just wanted to point out that this one is actually, I believe, on its original sanitary fair Vivandier body, and clothing is hidden underneath the blouse because the top was starting to go away and somebody made this
But
blouse.
the original dress is there.
It is there.
And all you have to do is get.
And this one has the flat-soled feet. Mm-hmm. So this one might be more like 1860s, I would guess.
And here's the learning curve for our audience on this particular doll costume. Okay. These were made by the hundreds.
Let's bring her out here.
Because we have had them, and these were sewing companions. So this would have had all
simple underwear.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what they have. And then they would have that little uniform.
Really can't see it very well, but you can see the little bit of
and the drum would be
work.
A pin cushion, and I love to when you get them, but they were sewing companions.
I left alone, but the others that I have here that I brought as heads only, they have bodies, but when you have a body that you see brand new looking sewing tabs holding it on, you know that it may not have arrived at the beginning of its life on that body. Right. So for saving space, I brought them decapitated. Don't feel bad. They have bodies. They will go back on.
You can put them back on.
And let's see. Now I want to talk about boys.
Boys.
Because we have boys. Now this one, of course, is a you see the side part? Mm-hmm. Side part is often associated with a boy hairstyle. And that is what we have here. We have the same kind of facial feature painting with the little smile, the open circles in the nostrils. And he is, let me just be, yes, he's poured in the mold.
So for our customers and members of our group, mm-hmm. Tell me what you're feeling when you feel the difference between poured and pressed. What's the feeling that you get? Tell me how you feel, Kathy. What are you feeling?
Well, I am feeling a relatively smooth surface. If you can imagine, if something is pressed in there, you're going to have little ridges where, they pressed harder in some area than another. You can also sometimes see that if you would shine a light into the head and it's pressed, you'll see variations in the thickness that can turn up when you shine a light inside there. You can almost feel a sharpness to the ones that are
very jagged.
Yeah, like let's look at this one, and can you see those jagged edges?
Oh yeah, and if you could get your finger in there, you'd
get it cut.
Yeah, so they had little people doing that work.
Yeah, I think they did. So this one is definitely poured, and then we look at this one, and if you compare them, this is the same hairstyle.
Totally the same.
I mean, they really are.
But I have to tell you, Kathy, that the bisque photographs lovely, much lovelier on photos than it is in life.
It is in person.
Yeah, I'm serious. I don't mean to be rude.
No, not at all.
Look at the detail of the curls.
There's always going to be more detail in the bisque.
Mm-hmm.
But yet this bisque is not, in my opinion, their best work.
No. Maybe they were just getting that under control.
That's what I'm they probably were watching as they saw their competitors start to make these bisque dolls. This one I have it stuffed with cotton, but look how thin. This is very thin.
Yeah.
This is poured.
Yeah.
That's the other thing with poured. They can get a much thinner product. They're saving materials.
Oh, big time.
And this one, you'll notice, has the same characteristics to the facial painting, though, with the lips.
And not only the materials, they're also saving the firing time because, the thicker it is, the longer it's going to take to bake.
But I do think that this one is actually not as of high quality bisque as this one.
No.
And brown hair is less common, by the way. So there you have those guys. Again, I don't know, 1860s, 1870s, somewhere in that ballpark.
I think they could be the 1860s to
and maybe
into the
this,
80s.
This one could have been the earlier one, and then they start making the bisque. Who knows?
I think that might have been around for a long time.
And then I'm going to come, almost forgot about this one. This one is another one of their more easily found models. I brought this one as a broken one because...
I'm just curious, can we measure how thick that...
This one is thin.
Okay, but let's measure it because I love my analytics.
This one is, if we're going you don't have metric on here, do you? Do you have metric?
I think we
good.
do.
Metric is, I like metric, sorry. Metric is a little bit more precise. This one is about 2 millimeters in thickness, which is a little bit less than 1/8 of an inch. But then you go to, let's say this one, which we know is earlier. It's a little harder to tell in this one because they rounded it.
Right.
But at the thicker part here, we're almost 4 millimeters.
Okay.
So almost twice as thick.
That would be something that they would be trying to control.
Yes.
Because that's some serious product.
But
it wasn't like they could call and order it from, Sealy's Porcelain. They had to go out and make it.
Yes, they did. So again, this one is poured, a more often found model.
But really, really cute.
But really cute. And again, a girl, a child, not an adult woman.
And these, a lot of people that are not necessarily doll collectors that collect, Americana and, they, use those for decorative purposes.
You dress this in a period cotton dress or make a cotton dress in that style. They are wonderful.
Or they're just cute on a shelf as heads.
And now you've been avoiding one elephant in the room here in the middle.
Yeah, well.
Now he's
She hasn't let me see this.
No, I haven't. So I said I was going to.
Could you lift it up a little bit so I can see it? Because she hasn't shared with me. Wow, it's looking pretty good.
Well, you look at the face and you see the same facial painting characteristics. And you take off the hat.
But we've got wisp around the face. It's a little different.
So this one also has a slight side part. So this one could be a boy child.
Or a girl, because it's
either
wispy.
Or. It's wispy. Now, I'm going to undo it. Can we undo it?
Well, I've been waiting all morning for you to take it off, Kathy.
So what would we call this? You know the word.
A poupard.
A poupard, that's right.
Or swaddling.
A poupard.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's fantastic. And look at those arms.
I'm going to show you the body here. This is a for real poupard body.
Oh, yes.
I knew you'd like this.
It's fantastic.
And the arms, I love the repair that's on these arms that is so tight and has been on there so long, you couldn't even get it off if you wanted to.
Fantastic.
This one on this side, again, they've repaired it. And if you wet leather, it will shrink. And they've wet the leather, so it shrunk.
Well, they must have wanted it to do that.
And they did, so that it would hold together that break in the arm. So this one has seen some play action.
It's a baby doll.
This is a baby.
This is a baby doll.
This is a baby doll.
And what is interesting is, did you notice down here, it might have originally been pink.
It may have had a red or pink garment.
Well, but the Kestner company did make pink-bodied dolls.
They did, so it's possible.
It could, or it could have been, as you said, a garment.
The other interesting thing, look at the sew holes on those. You don't usually see the sew holes on the arms.
And that's a very different arm, too.
They didn't use them, so I'm thinking.
Can you hold him up so we can see his?
Shall I take off his gown?
Well, just turn him around.
I can maybe take off.
Now we got the short neck, so that's infant, child. Got the standard holes.
Now, as far as I know, this is original on this body, as far as I know.
Well, it's not like the average collector would go, oh, I want that doll with a funny, and to our attendees, a poupard, normally you would see, they would be wooden.
And smaller.
And small. They'd be wooden, they would be wax, paper mache. This is the first time I've ever seen one with China.
I know. Very unusual.
And you can tell by what happened with the arms. We know why. Whack, whack.
Whack, whack. So are you adding to your want list?
Yes. I'll take that one too. It's a wonderful doll.
He's great. He's
But
fantastic.
I love him in his whole get up with
Yeah.
the whole thing.
He makes a great reveal, doesn't he?
He does. And the hands are wonderful.
So you never know what you'll find.
And I don't think of China's as baby doll collectors.
No, but he is definitely a baby.
He's an early baby.
This head, now it could be on a different body, and it could have been more of a boy or a young boy child. But here they have done it up as
Well, why
an
wouldn't you?
infant. Yeah.
Now, have we noticed I'm not in the Kestner early catalogs, are there poop arts?
I believe there are. I'll have to go back.
Okay, that's a very good,
But they're clearly the ones that are the paper mache, all made of one piece.
right. But you could still say then it was on their mind.
Absolutely.
As a viable product.
Absolutely. But I don't know.
And we're talking, this is not necessarily cuddly, but it's
It's hard to say whether this is.
But they
would you
wanted a
think this is
baby.
commercially made body? The
Yes.
stitching does look
Yeah.
like that's
I
a
mean,
repair.
it looks like it's had repairs, but I would say that's commercially made.
Yeah, there's a couple. Of
And it would be
repairs.
hard to get that leather like that
Yeah.
for the average consumer.
So this is the whole range that I have to share with you in this period of the Kestner production. After that, they started getting much more heavily into the bisque dolls to compete with the other German makers and the French. And the company went on from there and finally went out of business around 1938.
So they made it 100 years.
They did make it 100
Yeah,
years.
which is
easily,
really
which is phenomenal.
fantastic.
So I wanted to share these with you, and I also wanted to emphasize that there is some ambiguity in the early Chinas
Sure.
here about who actually made them, whether they were Kestner molds, we don't know. But there has been, to my knowledge, no documented
Well, we're going to
proof.
have to work till the day we die,
I
aren't
know,
we?
and you never know what'll come up.
Exactly.
So we just keep on plugging away and try the best we can. But I don't like to say this is definitely a Kestner because we are not 100% sure.
Exactly. Attributed.
Attributed is
We
a
think
fine.
maybe we're trying hard to get
We're
it right.
trying hard. It's better to say I'm not sure and maybe than to misidentify.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Kathy. It's been a lot of fun, and I love all the things you've brought. So thank you very much. Bye-bye, doll friends.
Bye-bye.
Remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button.